Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.
The nation must acquire land. Production of food, clothing, and shelter. Freedom is independent agriculture. Farming is the engine of the nation.
And greetings. This is Brother Patrick Muhammad with Engine of the Nation. This week we have our special guest, Brother Malik Yakini. Please welcome Brother Malik Yakini to Engine of the Nation.
It's such a pleasure to be here, Brother Patrick.
Greetings, sir. How are you doing?
Peace and blessings, brother. I'm well.
Awesome. And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend this time with us today. Can you tell our viewing audience a little bit about who you are as Brother Malik Yakini?
That would take a long time because I'm 65 years old, but I'll try to give you just a little synopsis and say that right now, most of the work that I do is related to building food sovereignty for Black people. And so I lead an organization in Detroit called the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. And we're really focused on organizing people around learning how to do farming, around building food cooperatives, around training young people to take a role in shaping the food system, and not just looking at ourselves as victims or as objects that the food system acts upon, but looking at ourselves as really shapers of the food system.
And so in that, I know you probably gave me like 28 years of history in like 45 seconds, right? So tell me, what was the start in you beginning to take interest and onus in food sovereignty, et cetera? Like, what was the catalyst for that?
Well, I'll go back to 1969. I was in the 8th grade sitting in my junior high school class, and I had some very conscious teachers at the time who played Malcolm X's Message to the Grassroots. And Malcolm X, in that speech, talked about what he called the field slave and the house slave. And he talked about the fact that our ancestors who were enslaved and who were living in the house with the so-called slave master ate the better options in terms of food. And the majority of our people who were in the fields got the things that were left over. And so we ate the parts of the pig, such as the snoot and the tail and the hoof. And then Malcolm X ended by saying, and the guts. And he said, that's what y'all were then, gut eaters. And he said, some of you are still gut eaters today. Now that shook me, because prior to that time, my very favorite food in the world was chitlins. And so as a 13-year-old listening to Malcolm X, who of course had been taught by the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, really got me to thinking about food beyond just whether or not I liked the way it tasted, and thinking about it within a historical and a cultural context. So I started changing my diet personally, first eliminating pork, then by 1975, eliminating meat altogether, and by 1981, becoming what I later found out was called a vegan.
Wow.
So that's kind of how I got started on a personal level. But as far as I got started with farming on a larger level, I was for 22 years the director of an African-centered school in Detroit. And in 1999, we started doing very robust gardening with the students at the school. And so that gardening at the school really exposed me to this larger food movement, and that there were Black people all across the country who were both doing gardening, building food co-ops, and trying to shape the food system that impacts their lives. And so that really put me on the course I'm on now.
Yes, sir. Now, in that quest, have you had any mentors in farming? Have you studied any models as it relates to your method that you're utilizing?
Well, I'll start by saying this, and I tell people this all the time. I didn't get into this work because of I'm trying to,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm an environmentalist, let's say that. Although I think the environment is important, I got into this really directly because I was influenced by the teachings of the Nation of Islam. And the reality is, and Black people have to admit this, that the nation was way out ahead of the rest of us in terms of understanding the importance of growing our own food and creating the systems to distribute that food. And so those were the early influences on me that really helped to shape the general direction that I'm moving in. But also, I've had other specific mentors, such as Brother Will Allen in Milwaukee, who for many years ran Growing Power, and our organization participated in the commercial urban agriculture training program that he had there, as did many members of the Nation of Islam, actually. So he definitely is a mentor, but I have many, many mentors. Brother Rashid Nuri, who is in Atlanta, and Brother Rashid actually used to at one point run the nation's farms in Alabama and Georgia. He's also a mentor. And then Brother Cornelius Williams, who lives in Detroit, but at one time ran the nation's farms in Michigan, the nation's farm in Michigan, is also a mentor. And I have many other mentors, Karen Washington, Sister Dara Cooper, many people who are involved in trying to make a more sovereign food system for Black people are my mentors.
Absolutely. And yes, Brother Rashid, I'm in Atlanta. Brother
Oh,
Rashid
I
is,
see.
definitely one of my mentors. And he was one that, as I first got into farming, it took me 2.5 years to get Brother Rashid Nuri to my farm, right? So he's excited, and our property is 31 acres and pretty beef and lamb, right? And so I said, Brother Rashid, if you were just like me, you bought your family a farm and, excited about it, what would you do, right? So I got my pen and pad out, and I was ready for this, this 20-page dissertation of what to do. And he looked at me and said, grow fruit trees.
He told me the same thing. When he came to our farm, that's exactly what he told us too.
And Brother Malik, I was disappointed, initially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I've been waiting 2.5 years. The brother told me to plant fruit trees. So maybe 6 to 7 months later, right? I'm cutting my front yard, and it's all these pecans that are tearing up my lawnmower. Mm-hmm. And I looked up at this 80-foot pecan tree, and he said, plant fruit trees. Because from generation on, I didn't plant the trees here, but I sell pecans all year long, right? And so now the fruit trees that I have planted, I might not see the initial harvest, but my children and my grandchildren will. So he's consistent. He said the same thing to you.
Yes.
As it relates to, now, are you in the city of Detroit or in your?
Yes. Our organization runs D-Town Farm, which is a 7-acre farm inside of a city park in Detroit. We're inside of the largest park in Detroit, but we're in a section of the park that's not used by people. And so that section of the park was called the Myers Tree Nursery. This is where the city would plant trees that they transplant around the city. And so we currently are occupying 7 acres inside of that Myers Tree Nursery.
Wow. Now, as you stated that, and partnering with the city, obviously, in this aspect of it, has that been easy, turning this space into a food space?
It was relatively easy. At least the politics of it were relatively easy because we had some allies who were on the city council at the time. Sister Joanne Watson has been a very strong advocate for Black people for many years. And she was really our champion on the city council. Then also my longtime friend, Brother Kwame Kenyatta, who's now an ancestor, was also on the city council. So having those long-term relationships with people who were in positions of power helped it to go pretty smoothly. And so we were able to get a license agreement with the city, which initially was a 10-year agreement. And we are in the process of finalizing a second agreement, which is a 20-year agreement.
Awesome. And now, so let's talk a little bit about how do you service the community with your model?
So I'll say that mostly what we're doing is we are planting seeds in the consciousness of Black people. Mm-hmm. And we're creating a model that can be replicated in whole or in part. We're not under the illusion that on 7 acres, we're going to provide, a significant portion of the food that's consumed in the city of Detroit. We just don't have the capacity to do that. But what we do have the capacity to do is to produce thousands of pounds of food and to demonstrate how that's done, to train new people, a new cadre of farmers, of Black farmers in an urban area. And we have the ability to set up the distribution systems, both in terms of farmers markets and selling to retail stores that are needed to kind of complete the food chain. And so we see our work basically as modeling it, and we're trying to encourage other people in our community to pick this up, so that it's not just a centralized movement that we're controlling, but that we have folks all over the city who are planting gardens and who are providing additional high quality, nutrient dense food for our community.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So I have two spinoffs from that particular. One of them is talk to me a little bit about your relationship to public education and how you have infused that. And then the second part of that is we understand farmers market, many farmers out there, they're familiar with the farmers market. But when you begin to talk about taking your product to stores for it to eventually be retail, can you talk about those two aspects?
Sure. So with schools, I'll start with that. So we have a youth program called the Food Warriors Youth Development Program. And I mentioned that I was director of an African-centered school for 2 decades. And so actually, when we first started, this youth program started at the school I was running. And then we had 2 sister schools, one called Timbuktu Academy and one called Aisha Shule. And so we had the youth program initially at these 3 schools, teaching young people how to build and maintain raised bed gardens, how to plant and harvest that food, and how to prepare it in healthy ways. Then everything that we do is rooted within an understanding that Black people in America face a crisis of identity. Because of the fact that we live in a white supremacist society, we have internalized many of these notions that give us a feeling of inferiority about ourselves, and we have a lack of knowledge about our culture. In fact, we know more about the people who enslaved our ancestors than we know about our ancestors. And so with that knowledge, we make sure that as we're teaching children, we're teaching them about concepts of agriculture that came from traditional African societies, as well as the tremendous contributions to agriculture that have been made in America by people like George Washington Carver.
Awesome. Look, I'm going to have to talk to you offline a little bit more about that because that is my interest as it relates to children in agriculture. And I do run a public charter school. Our focus is agriculture. So I would love to talk to you a little more.
I would love to. I have lots I could share and lots I'm sure I could learn.
Yes, likewise. And now talk about taking your product from the farm and then preparing it for potential retail.
Right. Well, so one of the things we're really concerned about is safety. And so especially as you start selling food on the retail level, you have to be concerned about food safety and that you're using the best practices for harvesting the food, for washing the food, for packing it, and for transporting it. Because just one person getting salmonella or something like that can have a tremendously detrimental effect on not only our farm, but the whole urban agricultural movement in the city of Detroit. And so we take great care to make sure that we're using the best harvesting practices, that we're not harvesting fruits that have been damaged, that have maybe feces from birds on them and things like that, that can compromise the integrity of those foods. So that's a part of preparing for retail. The other part is temperature, keeping the food at a temperature so that it stays fresh longer as you're transporting it from the farm to the market. Unfortunately, we don't have refrigerated trucks yet. And so what we end up doing is putting the produce in ice chest and keeping it cool until we can transport it to the retail locations. But we're also very concerned about who we sell food to. We're not just in this to make as much money. In fact, we're not really making money. We're trying to provide a service to our community. And so, we have many white restaurants and Whole Foods and other places that would like to buy our food from us, but we're very thoughtful about trying to make sure that as much as possible, we're selling to other Black people who are also on this mission of creating a Black food system where we can circulate our dollars within our community. Now, that's not to say that we don't sell to any white restaurants, because we do. But
Mhm.
that's not the majority of what we sell to at all. Sometimes farms take what I consider to be the easy way out, and they start selling to high-end white restaurants things like microgreens that are easy to make a big dollar on, but I'm not sure that's really servicing our community. And so our primary effort is to grow black food that ends up on black plates. Now, in order to do that, sometimes we sell a certain percentage of what we have to other races in order to have the income to keep our operation flowing.
Now, as it relates to food desert, we hear that oftentimes. And I was watching some special this week as they talked about COVID and the vaccinations, and they talked about pharmacy deserts as well, right? So now that they have these vaccines that we're staying away from, those that are interested in our community can't get them because they can't get to them anyway. But talk to me about how you are working to eradicate food deserts in the Detroit area.
Well, I'll start by saying, Brother Patrick, that many of us have stopped using that term food desert. And I'll tell you why we've stopped using it. And you're actually showing a picture now on the screen of a gas station near my house that I had a conflict with about 2 weeks ago. This is a tremendous problem. Folks from all over the world who come into Black communities to open up shops and extract our profits out. But anyway, that's another story. But food deserts, um, the reason that I have stopped using that word and several other people have stopped using it is because, first of all, a desert is not this barren place that we think about. It's really a rich ecosystem. Secondly, um, the the term is a term that's been imposed on our people. You run a school, so you've heard terms like at-risk child, for example. In the 22 years that I ran a school, that I was principal of a school, I never had a parent come to me and say, "This is my son Johnny. He's an at-risk child." That's not how we describe our situation. So similarly with food desert, this is a term that was imposed on our community. It didn't come from us. We didn't describe our situation like that. So that's another problem with the term. And then there's a problem with the term just in terms of how it got popularized in the United States by a researcher named Mari Gallagher out of Chicago. And I don't want to go into that long story now, but many people are starting to use the word food apartheid because it speaks to the intentionality of this disparity in food access. When people think about a desert, they think about it as being kind of a naturally occurring phenomenon. Although human activity does impact desertification, excuse me, as well. But people think about deserts as being like these kind of naturally occurring phenomena. And what we see, this lack of access that we have in Black communities, is not some naturally occurring phenomenon that just happened. This is the result of intentional policies. And so by using the term food apartheid, we speak to the intentionality of the disparities that our people are facing.
Wow, wow. I will now, moving forward, always use food apartheid. I truly understand it. And like you said, those things have been imposed on us.
Yeah.
Recently, I'm looking at the food pyramid, right? Traditional that we've been given. And you talked about your transition to becoming a vegan. How have you and your organization worked to adjust the taste buds of our community so that they enjoy what is grown and not processed more?
Well, one of the things we do, like with our youth program, is about once a month we do a food demonstration. And so we show the young people how to prepare foods in healthy ways. And we're doing this online now, by the way, we're doing it in person. And how to prepare it in healthy ways that's tasty. For example, most Black people in America grew up putting ham hock or some piece of meat in their greens. And so many Black people just can't imagine eating greens that don't have some pork in them. And so, we demonstrate how to prepare foods in a way that is free of all that excess fat and all of the harmful things that come along with eating swine, and to be able to have this nutrient dense plant-based diet. Although we're not really trying to encourage people to be vegans. What you're showing now, by the way, is some footage from my home garden, my family garden this past year. So that, as a result of the pandemic, we did some shifting also. And instead of encouraging people to come to our farm to volunteer, like we have in the past, we encourage people to do smaller gardens that they can manage with less people.
Speaking of shifting, this year my main product is beef and lamb, and so with the COVID and the processors closing or the date so scarce, we've had to shift and adjust, and we do more agritourism and the horseback riding, etc. Now, one thing that I've seen with our farmers is not having the entrepreneurship lens to be able to shift to maintain the farm. Can you talk about over the years how you all had to adjust or shift to maintain your farming organization?
Well, I'll tell you something that Baba Rashid Nuri told me, and that is that all agriculture in the United States is subsidized. And so a lot of times we hear people talk about, well, is this 1 acre farm, is it making a profit? No, it's not making a profit. Most 500-acre farms aren't making a profit. In fact, in the United States, most farmers have to work a second job just to maintain the farm. And so it's really unfair to expect that smaller farms, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 acres, are going to turn a profit, because there's a problem in the food system in general. And the majority of the profit is not made by the farmer, and it's not made by the retailer. It's made by all those layers in between. And so, no, we're not turning a profit, to be truthful with you. And we are heavily subsidized by grant funding, primarily by foundations. We've got some USDA grants as well that supplement the income that we're able to generate by actually selling the produce. So we are conscious that we need to move more towards being more self-reliant, less grant dependent. And we're putting things in place to increase production, to increase sales. But again, I don't think it's fair to think that small farms in America should do what larger farms are not able to do, and that is to turn a profit without the benefit of subsidies.
Absolutely. And what I've seen in some of the farms in the Metro Atlanta area is setting up the farm and the structure to where you can receive some subsidies to maintain the farm. And so that's one aspect that we would love to share more as it relates to getting people set up to be able to receive those particular.
But Brother Patrick, as you said about agritourism, that's something we've been doing for some years. In fact, just a couple of years ago, we started asking for a $5 donation per person for people who tour our farm. And we have probably close to 1,000 people who tour our farm each year, except for this year, of course, because of COVID. And so many small farms have started to look at agritourism as an additional source of income. And the same is true with us.
Yes, sir. Can you talk to me a little bit, Brother Malik, about value-added products that you all have been able to create from your farm?
Sure. We haven't done a lot with that, truthfully. We're trying to do more in this coming year. About the only thing we have produced value-added products over the years is pickles from cucumbers that we've grown. And actually, some of the youth that we work with, we used to have a high school program called Food and Flavor, where we were teaching agriculture and entrepreneurship. And so the students in that program grew the cucumbers, and then canned the pickles and sold them. And I can tell you that agriculture suddenly made a whole lot more sense to them when they sold those pickles, and each one put some money in their pockets. But we're looking next year towards getting more into value-added products, because frankly, that's where the majority of the money is in the food system. If you just sell some, let's say collard greens, for example, you'll get one price if you just go to the farmer's market and sell a pound of collard greens. But if you chop those greens and put them in a plastic bag, the price instantly goes up. And so we're working on a big project called the Detroit Food Commons that we're going to begin construction on in the spring of 2021. And the primary feature of that development is a food co-op, a cooperative grocery store called the Detroit People's Food Co-op, which will occupy the first floor of this 34,000 square foot building that we're building. But on the second floor, we're going to have 4 incubator kitchens that several local farms will have access to. And that will give us the facility that we need to get more seriously into value-added production, as well as having this retail location, the store that we're creating, to sell those value-added products in. Yeah, you're showing a photo right now. It was just on the screen of our end of the year planning session at D-Town Farm, where our farm staff got together and assessed what went well, what didn't go so well, what crops we need to plant more of next year, what crops we need to plant less of, so on and so forth. So we do that at the end of every growing season.
Well, I want to pause for just a second because you jumped into something, and I think I missed it a little bit. You're talking about this facility that's being built, and we want more about that facility. So we're going to pause for just a second and have this announcement from the Final Call newspaper.
Greetings. This is Drake Shakir Muhammad with National Network View. This week's issue of the Final Call newspaper is all about 2020 and what it meant to Black America. The FCN's cover story talks about the fight for justice for Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's Savior's Day and Criterion messages, and covers the COVID-19 pandemic, President Trump, and all that globally impacted communities across the globe. To read more, subscribe to FinalCallDigital.com, and thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, NNV News. This is Tarika Shakir Muhammad with NNVNews.com.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.
And welcome back to Engine of the Nation on NNV News. I'm Brother Patrick Muhammad, and we're here with Brother Malik Yakini. So, Brother Malik, you began to talk to us about this building that's being built. Our last few moments we were talking about is not a lot of profit happening, and we have to do some stuff.
Right.
Shifted to me real quick on this new building and grocery store, the second floor, and I got excited. So I want to hear a little more about that. So throw it out a little bit and tell us, how do we get from this planning session to this new building being built?
I will tell you about that. First, I want to give a shout out because I see some of my brothers and sisters and comrades in Atlanta are watching this live. So I want to shout out Brother Ross Kofi. I want to shout out Brother Eugene, Sister Rachelyn, and all the other good folks who are doing urban agriculture in the city of Atlanta. So for 10 years, we've been working on this project. We knew when we started our organization in 2006 that one of our objectives was to start a food co-op. And I'll give you the background on that. And I'll say that, first of all, we think capitalism is a terrible system for human beings and for the planet. And that we think within the context of a capitalist system, the best opportunity that we have to galvanize our collective wealth is through cooperatives. And in fact, this is what we have historically done in the face of a system which is hell-bent on keeping us out of the mainstream economy. And so we've been working on this cooperative for 10 years. We started out with the feasibility study in 2010, and I won't go through all of the steps, but I'll just say that we're at the point now where we're ready to begin construction in the spring of this year. It's going to be a new 34,000 square foot building called the Detroit Food Commons. Wow. The entire first floor, 17,000 feet, will be a cooperatively owned grocery store called the Detroit People's Food Co-op. We intend on sourcing as much of our produce as possible, not only from D-Town Farm, but also from other local growers in Detroit as much as possible, and then in the kind of the Southeast Michigan region where we can't get those things directly inside of the city of Detroit. And so the store will be a full service grocery store. It's going to sell, even though I'm personally vegan, the vast majority of our people eat meat, and I'm certainly not on a mission to try to get Black people to stop eating meat. But if people are interested in that, I'd be glad to talk to them. I'm not trying to convert people, but I'm always willing to share information. But we'll sell meat and fish, baked goods, produce, groceries, health items, home care items, all those kinds of things that you would find in any grocery store. And so, you know, one of the challenges, as I mentioned, facing Black communities throughout the United States is that because of the fact that we have been so disempowered historically, and in many cases, our communities were devastated, such as in Detroit and Atlanta, where freeways came through and broke up Black business districts, we find our economies and our communities in shambles. And so others come in from around the world, from Pakistan, from India, from Iraq, from Yemen, from Vietnam, in order to open stores in Black communities, because they know that we're in a vulnerable position. We're not doing this for ourselves, and there's tremendous profits to be made by selling stuff to Black people. And so we're pushing back against this, and we think that co-ops are the best way for us to push back because they're collectively owned. They're even better than just Black businesses owned by individuals or partnerships, because co-ops have broad membership, broad ownership, and the member owners actually decide what happens in the store. They're able to elect people to the board of directors, which sets the policy for the store. So it's a shift in paradigm for our people, rather than just seeing ourselves as consumers going to stores owned by others. We're going to stores owned by ourselves. Again, this is something that the Nation of Islam was a forerunner in. Even in the city of Detroit, there was our supermarket in the early 1970s, and certainly in Chicago on I think it was on Cottage Grove. It's a bit foggy right now, but there was our supermarket in Chicago as well. And so we're building on that tradition that has been. We are also making sure that we are incorporating the cooperative concept. So the store is going to take about 9 to 12 months to build. Once construction starts, will open in the spring of 2022, the Detroit People's Food Co-op. I'm not sure if I lost you. Um,
Greetings. This is Turkish Shakir Muhammad with National Network View. This week's issue of the Final Call newspaper is all about 2020 and what it meant to Black America. The FCN's cover story talks about the fight for justice for Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's Savior's Day and Criterion messages, and covers the COVID-19 pandemic, President Trump,
All right, and welcome back. Pardon us, we are having some technical difficulties. We are in Atlanta and Detroit, and it's storming here in Atlanta. So we believe we were losing Brother Malik, and you all were losing me. So again, thank you for tuning in to Engine of the Nation, and we have Brother Malik Yakini with us. And Brother Malik, thank you again. And Paul, about this new building.
I didn't hear all of what you said. I think part of it was muted. Can you repeat that?
Yes. Do you mind sharing what you were talking about as it relates to the new building before we got cut off?
So I was talking about the Detroit Food Conference, 34,000 square foot new building that we're building right on Detroit's main avenue. And we wanted to make sure that we put it right in the thick of things. Some people try to encourage us to build on a back street. We want to be right in the middle of stuff, making this statement about cooperative economics in the face of a Detroit where, like most places in the United States, most of the development that we see is happening because wealthy white men are coming in and doing the development. And so in Detroit, which is the blackest city in America, we're setting another kind of example of how Black people can lead development in our own community. So this will be a game changer because, frankly, there's not many food co-ops in the United States that are serving majority Black, low and income communities. Most food co-ops in the United States are in college towns, are serving more affluent communities. Not all. There's a wonderful co-op in Atlanta that I understand can transition now to majority Black co-op. Most co-ops in the country are not serving majority Black communities or low and moderate income communities. And so we're creating a model that we hope can be replicated in other Black communities throughout the United States. And we're not just doing this work in Detroit, but we work with the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, a national organization that has more than 20 organizational members who all of whom are doing similar work throughout the country. And we're involved in the part of the work where we're organizing food co-op operators, Black food co-op operators throughout the country so that we can share knowledge, share skills, share resources, and we can build a Black food movement. In fact, we are working on what we call building Black self-determining food economies.
Awesome. Now, one more question that I have is, and I asked this a minute ago, if you had a magic wand and anything that you desired for your organization as it relates to the food system, you can make it happen. What would be some of those desires?
If I had a magic wand, I would first abolish white supremacy and capitalism and all of the corporate entities that are part of that. And I would I would wave that wand and change our focus to smaller farms using sustainable and regenerative practices that are not going to destroy the earth like the current industrial farming system is doing. I also would then wave that magic wand and cause Black people to reassess our diet and to move away from the kind of diets that we adopted as a result of our ancestors being enslaved. By the way, that screenshot is Brother Kadiri Senefara. He's now an ancestor. He was our farm manager, and he succumbed to lung cancer 2 years ago in 2018. So I just want to shout him out. But I would wave this wand and have Black people would reassess what we're putting into our bodies and reassess our relationship, the relationship between what we put into our bodies and the systems that oppress us, and start moving in a way that fosters not only an awareness of our need to control the food system, but fosters our awareness of the spiritual relationship between the foods that we put into our bodies and our health. The reality is that the energy that we get from foods gets its energy from the sun and from the soil. And so we really want to be connected to the natural order of things. And we want to make sure that we're getting our vitamins and minerals from nature, as opposed to getting those things from that have been produced in factories and injected into foods. And so those are some of the things that I would do if I had a magic wand. I would probably wave the wand and transfer huge amounts of wealth from the United States, England, France, and the rest of the European world to Black people and oppressed people throughout the world, so that we could see some balance in how wealth is distributed in the world. Right now, the white world power is gangstering wealth, gangstering it all over the world and funneling the wealth that is created by the hands and the intellectual labor of Black and brown people in order to make people of European descent wealthy.
And thank you for that answer. And you have so much to share. We definitely want to make sure we get an opportunity to have you back on Engine of the Nation, and we'll control the weather a little better, make sure we don't lose each other. But
Pat,
before we
do I have 10 seconds to shout out the email address of the National Black Food and
yes,
Justice?
I was just coming to that. I was going to say, do you mind sharing with our viewing audience how they can connect with you and how they can stay in contact with you?
So for those who are not in Detroit, for those who are in Atlanta or other parts of the country, you can connect with the National Black Food and Justice Alliance on our website, which is www.blackfoodjustice.org. Again, that's www.blackfoodjustice.org. If you are in the city of Detroit or you want to support the work that we're doing in the city of Detroit, you can connect with the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network at our website, which is www.dbcfsn.org. Again, that's www.dbcfsn.org. Again,
Brother Malik, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I am Patrick Muhammad with Engine of the Nation, signing off for this week. Please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, NNV News, and visit us on all of our social media platforms. Thanks again. Assalamu alaikum.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.